my fellow Americans. This evening, I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
Oh, where have you been, my blue-eyed son? And where have you been, my darling young one? I've stumbled on the side of 12 misty mountains. I've walked and I've crawled on 6 crooked highways. I've stepped in the middle of 7 sad forests. I've been out in front of a dozen dead oceans. I've been 10,000 miles in the mouth of a graveyard. It's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, and it's a hard rains are gonna fall.
Well, we have been using these drones for 10 years now, and in the case of Pakistan for over 8 years now, and killed thousands of people with the drone strikes. We haven't seen any photos of this. We haven't seen children who've been killed. We haven't seen children who've been orphaned by these drone attacks. And I'm going to show you a couple of pictures just because it's important for us to see these pictures, and because the American people should be forced to see these pictures. You know, most of the time when the drone strikes, the victims are just vaporized and there's almost no remains left. So most of these are people who have been killed by shrapnel or burned by the shrapnel. But what is so important is to understand that if you don't see these pictures, it's very hard to have any compassion towards these victims. And so when I say that 8 out of 10 people think it's just fine to use these drones, part of the reason for that must be because they have never seen the drone victims. I mean, one thing is to say that the pilots are so removed from the wars, but the other thing is that we, the people, are so removed from this as well. Quite a surreal situation to think that these pilots are in Air Force bases all over this country, and that they are sitting in air-conditioned rooms, they are in ergonomic chairs, and they are looking at a screen that's giving them a view of a place that's thousands and thousands of miles away, and yet here they are pressing a button that is killing people thousands of miles away. Some people say that the configuration of the consoles were done precisely to resemble the PlayStations that teenagers grew up using when they play war games. And this was done to make a smooth transition from those games to the real thing. We find the same levels of PTSD among drone pilots, though, as you do among soldiers who were on the battlefield. There were 46 drone strikes during the 8 years of the Bush administration. It worked out to 1 every 40 days during the time that they were being used. But when Obama came in, that was increased dramatically, and by the time of 2011, they were doing 1 drone strike every 3 days. Under the Bush administration, it is said that Guantanamo was the biggest recruiter for the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Under the Obama administration, it's the drone strikes that is the biggest recruiter. And I also just want to mention that your governor, waiting for some sound effect there. Your governor has recently gone to Washington, D.C. to make the case that Arizona should be one of the 6 places around the country that are the testing grounds for the opening up of the airspace to drones.
So I was at the mayor and council meeting when our now Congressman Ron Barber came to support the drones moving to Davis-Monthan, and with him was a member of the Southern Arizona Leadership Council, and they did talk about jobs, and they also talked about how it would be good for the economy because people would buy things, they would be living here. And then what really got me is that they said there would be no effect on Tucson. I mean, they said there's, that's the good news. There's not planes flying over creating noise because that's an issue here. And so I guess my question would be, and you talked a little bit about the PTSD, but I would like for there to be a response to that there's no effect on Tucson by having drone pilots and drone, people deployed here.
So they were saying it's only positive effect.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, God, how do you answer that one? According to international law, when you are piloting drones from any place that you're doing it, and you're doing it illegally, as we are doing in the case of Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, we have not declared war there, we are violating other people's sovereignty, that becomes a legitimate target for anybody who wants to attack us. So that's why people in places like upstate New York got very upset about it, because they said, we are part of the war zone. We have made the war zone come home now. So that's one way to look at it. The other, yes, is the PTSD issue. And for God's sake, I mean, we got to have a little bit bigger vision than our own cities and look at how this is affecting us internationally. When there was a poll that was done of how the rest of the world sees our drone program, it was very different from how people in the United States were seeing it. The vast majority of people out around the world think that we are barbaric. And so I think, you should have a little bit broader perspective than your own backyard and recognize that when we are using these weapons in a way that is pissing off the entire world, that actually is a negative impact on our security, whether we're in Tucson or anywhere else in this country.
And what did you see, my blue-eyed son? And what did you see, my darling young one? I saw a newborn baby with wild wolves around it. Saw a highway of diamonds with nobody on it. I saw a black branch with blood that kept dripping. I saw a room full of men with their hammers bleeding. And I saw a white ladder all covered with water. I saw 10,000 talkers whose tongues were all broken. I saw guns and sharp swords in the hands of young children. And it's a hard, and it's a hard, rains are gonna fall.